death of Michael Brown in Ferguson brought police brutality to the national stage, but in the months since that shooting, there's been very little action to prevent another tragedy. In fact, we've only seen more deaths. Joining me now to talk about the growing problem is Howard Nations. Howard, it's so typical of the media, as the attention span of the media is we look at it for several days. Some, depending on the story, we might look at it a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then nobody pays any attention to the backstory after that. I think the Ferguson situation is a great example of that. Everything from Mike Brown to everything that's happened there in Ferguson continues really nationally, and it's not just African Americans. It affects all of us where it comes to the way that police handle us in custody. Talk about what's happening nationally on this.
Well, Mike, there is a principle in psychology called the availability principle, and it says that we take our actions and we make our decisions based upon the information that is available to us. That's where the media becomes so very important. So if we had more information about the shootings in custody, the shootings during arrest by police officers of citizens, we might get some real action. This all started, to give you a little history, back in 2000 they had the Death in Custody Reporting Act that was passed, and the idea was if they could gather information and make it available to the public, it may help us approach the problem. It would be available to them. But there were no teeth in the law. The states refused to go along with it. The police departments refused to go along with it. The NRA, of course, opposed it because it involves guns. The right wing opposed it. The result was that it expired in 2006 with very little results. They tried 4 more times to renew it and were unable to do so until recently.
Well, let me ask you this. Obviously, the importance of that is in most things that affect our society or culture, there's some kind of central reporting. Right. And your point is there certainly should be some kind of central reporting where police are killing citizens. I mean, however they do it, whether they shoot them, right, whether they beat them to death, there should be some type of central reporting to where we can look back and say, how did we do that year? Did we do well or did we do worse? Is that your point?
That's exactly right. For example, the shooting of police officers who are killed in the line of duty, that database goes back to the 1700s and it is updated daily. But the DOJ stats from 2003 to 2009 show that there are 4,813 people who have died in custody or during arrest. There's no data regarding if they're armed or race or ethnicity or things of that nature. The good news is Representative Bobby Scott, a Democrat from Virginia, after the death of Michael Brown and Eric Garner, he managed to get Congress to pass, or the Senate to pass, the Death in Custody Reporting Act, which says now states have to report to the DOJ the number of people killed during arrest and in custody, and they also have the requirement for all federal law enforcement agencies. They have to report age, gender, race, ethnicity, the date, time, and location, and a brief description of the act. Now, this time they put some teeth in it. The Attorney General has a $500 million fund to go to the states. He can withhold those funds if the states refuse to cooperate.
In other words, by the way, a lot of the material we're talking about here is in a great article by Mother Jones, and I just think it's so well done. It's just such a well done article by Mother Jones magazine. But they talk about the idea that when the Department of Justice started focusing on Ferguson, all of a sudden it was almost like a eureka moment. They understood this is not just about Ferguson. They understood, first of all, that they didn't have any way to really do a really comprehensive report because there was no reported information. And the next thing they found out was the similarity between the way that Ferguson operates as far as how it trains its police, the attitude about police, about the citizens, not just African Americans, not just Hispanics, across the board. How do they regard citizens in general? But they started seeing a pattern that they thought had application to the rest of the nation, and it does. Out of Ferguson, I'm interested in your response to this, Howard. of course, you heard the right wing saying, yes, the reason that more African Americans are targeted, and the reason we have more deaths by police with African Americans is the right wing is out there saying, well, of course, they commit more crime. That really doesn't bear itself out on a per capita analysis, does it?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, the crime that Michael Brown was committing was jaywalking, and the crime that Eric Garner was committing was allegedly selling untaxed cigarettes.
And the crime that Wall Street is committing is they steal $13 trillion from us and nobody goes to jail. But that puts it in perspective, doesn't it? But go ahead.
Exactly. But in the absence of DOJ adequate reporting, you've had websites come up that are based on media links where research has been done by independent groups around the country. This is amazing. They found in 2013 there were 763 people killed by police officers. In 2014 there are 1,100. This is not just African Americans. In 2014 there were 1,100 people killed by police officers. That's a 44% increase in 1 year. That's an average of 3 per day. So while violent crime in the United States is at an all-time low, police shootings are at an all-time high. And when you look at this, in 2014, 1,100 people shot by police. In 2014, in the military in Afghanistan and Iraq, there were only 58, thank God, only 58 military killed.
Mother Jones did a great job also pointing out, I think, that these shootings of unarmed black men, they're not limited to poor black communities. I mean, we're seeing no matter where, if you're driving while black, if you're walking while black, you're at risk whether you're in Hollywood, Riverside, California, Prince George County, in wherever. You're at risk. And I thought that was a pretty compelling. In other words, if you think you're doing everything right and you're not going to be a victim in all this, I think this story really says, that's not the case. What's your take on it?
Well, there was also a study of 10 major cities regarding fatal police shootings. They found a very highly disproportionately high number of African Americans that were shot by police in all 10 cities, particularly New York, San Diego, and Las Vegas. But for example, in Oakland, officer-involved shootings, 37 out of 45 shootings, 82% were African American, 0 were white. There were 15 fatalities. So this whole shooting of African Americans, the perception now from what they see is that police kill unarmed citizens on video with impunity, without probable cause, and
white,
without fear
black,
of reprisal.
Caucasian, it doesn't make any difference. We're not just talking about African Americans here.
And the punishment is administrative leave with pay. I mean, it's just wrong. It goes back to the American culture of violence. If you look at there's a fascinating personal freedom index, the 2014 Legatum Prosperity Index, which measures personal freedoms of American citizens versus the rest of the world. The U.S. has fallen from 9th in 2010 to 21st worldwide in 2014. On other scales, we rank as low as 46th. In
Howard,
personal freedoms. We
need to do a story on that alone, okay? Howard Nations, thank you for bringing this story to us. Police violence really affects. It's kind of like the old saying: they came for the unions first, and I wasn't concerned, and then they came for the socialists, and I wasn't concerned, and then they came for me. That's what we have to be concerned about as we think about this story. Thank you, Howard Nations.
My pleasure, Mike. Thanks.